All right, I think we're ready to go. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see everybody in person. Yes, welcome to the second part of a two-part series called Convening the Community. Today, we'll be discussing the economic imperatives that will set the stage for a 2030 vision for the greater Phoenix region. My name is Eric Sperling. I'm the founder and managing director over at STN. If you're unfamiliar with STN, we're a local media company. We're right over there by Chase Field. We have a streaming network, and all of our shows and programs are dedicated to local leadership, community growth, actionable solutions, hence our partnership with GPEC. And we've been partnering with them on the regional report for some time now, right about the time COVID started. Now it's exciting for us to kick things off with convening the community. So before we start today's event, we want to hear some remarks from Reverend Daniel Hendrickson. He is the president of Creighton University. Let's take a look.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Daniel Hendrickson, and I'm president of Creighton University, where we have a home campus at Omaha, Nebraska, and this new campus here in the city of Phoenix. I'm sorry I could not be with you in person for what is sure to be a terrific event, especially with it being held in this brand new health sciences campus, a facility that so many of us are so proud of. But I did not want to miss an opportunity to reinforce the importance of days like today. There are several reasons why I'm thrilled to be a GPEC board member, and certainly among them is the critical work this group has been doing for 32 years, the future it is casting. Convening the community is about celebrating and amplifying the work being done in and around Phoenix and setting the course for what can accomplish in the future by working together. I hope you are ready for some impressive presentations by leaders steadfast in their belief in this region. I also hope today creates even more meaningful dialogue about how to build the brightest future possible. To be sure, the belief in a bright future is precisely the reason for the building you now occupy. As most in this room probably know, Phoenix is the fastest growing big city in the United States, and we have known for some time the very serious shortage of healthcare professionals in the area and in the Southwest. Arizona ranks 44th of 50 states in total active primary care physicians and surgeons. Without a new source of practice-ready health professionals, there simply will not be enough healthcare workers available to care for its citizens, particularly the underserved. In and of our Jesuit Catholic mission, there's always something quite special fueling and inspiring the work we do at Creighton University. Shared commitment that impels us to do more. The beautiful new facility you are in today is both our response to the need and a reflection of that mission. By the time we're fully up and running in 2025, it will be home to nearly 1,000 health profession students who we know will contribute meaningfully to this community. With that, I would like to share my sincerest gratitude to all of my colleagues at GPEC for all of their work in making a day like today possible. I hope the experience is an enjoyable one for you all. Thank you and take care.
All right, let's kick things off today. Let's bring up to the stage Chris Camacho, President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. Chris, come on up.
All right, well, good morning. Thanks everybody for being here in person. This is the second in the series of what we hope to be a very important day for the region here in metropolitan Phoenix. There's a lot of positive things happening here in the market. Suns are 17 wins in a row, so that's pretty cool. We've got the best record in the NFL with Arizona Cardinals. Yeah. And we had a little territorial cup, Michael, right? That ASU took the title away from U of A. Yeah. So what's funny is I got like half claps on that one because some of you were like, I can't believe you said that. Well, first of all, thanks again for being here. This is a very important time in Arizona's history. And the conversations that I've had with many of you, whether it's university leadership, other education leaders, the civic community, the business community, we do believe the time is now. The time is now to set forth a chartered plan, a 2030 vision that will enable us to come together, work as a coalition, not only with the people in the room, but also those of you that are on Zoom today. I've had a number of conversations with coalition leaders here in the community that not only want to take advantage of the positive momentum that we have over the last decade, but how do we become more intentional? How do we put ourselves in a position where in 2030 we look back and say, we made an intentional roadmap that enables our market to become even more dynamic, more innovation intensive, coupled with having a lens of inclusive economic development. So that's what really we're going to focus on today. It's a pretty aggressive schedule. We've got some great speakers and leaders that we're going to talk through this conversation with. And finally, you know, I think the key importance of being an economic architect is ensuring not only that you're listening to the market, you're listening to the leaders in the market, you're working with other peer organizations, of which I see many of you here today, but you also are setting an unapologetic, ambitious vision for the community that we all live in. And it's going to take all of us to come together to really steer this ship and take advantage of all of these attributes that we have right before us. So thanks again for being here. We're going to unpack kind of the next 2 hours together. And I'm really excited about the show we'll have for today. So back to you, Eric.
All right. Thanks, Chris. And as Chris mentioned, this is a hybrid event, so I do have to go over some housekeeping items for those of you in the room and then also joining online. This morning's Convening the Community event will run for approximately 2 hours, as Chris mentioned. The hybrid event and online audience members are muted and without video. Now, this event is being recorded, will be shared on the GPEC website and social media. For our online participants, should you experience any technical difficulties at all, just try the old log out, log back in. That usually fixes it. Now, you may submit questions using the digital Q&A feature. For those online, of course, there's a link there in the chat for you to use. But here's the important thing. For those in the room, you'll use the QR code that you can see on the screen there. The QR code is also located throughout the room at your table. So due to time constraints, we may not be able to get all the questions, but would love for you to submit some for our Q&A portion. And we, of course, do invite you to share this information on social media. Please feel free to tag GPEC and use the hashtag Convening the Community where appropriate. All right, a short video you're about to view will introduce the economic imperatives we've been talking about and setting the stage for today's continued dialogue. So without further ado, Chris Camacho, let's check out the video.
Over the last decade, Greater Phoenix has continued to thrive. It's been an exciting time to be in Arizona. With that said, we need to ensure that we're hyper-specializing in certain industries that lead to global notoriety for the metropolitan Phoenix region. We need to ensure an aggressive economic growth strategy that promotes inclusion and opportunity and access for all of our citizens here in Metro Phoenix. We're going to continue to work very closely with our partner organizations to advance a Vision 2030 that will have lasting effects and consequence for the future residents of our region. These following 10 imperatives set forth a critical vision of Vision 2030 that will allow us to execute and meet the future needs of our economy.
NDAT is an opportunity for students of all backgrounds, and this will help to diversify the workforce. So the ideal pipeline would be one where students have access early on and also get to see how this particular subject is used in the workplace. I'm a former math professor, and the biggest question that I often got from students was, where am I ever going to use this? So when students have an opportunity to learn where they're going to use that, we're probably going to be more likely to engage them in that field, to keep them in that field, and turn them into successful employees someday in some of these industries.
Phoenix Union's demographics are 90% students of color. We are also 82% Latino, and 77% of our students qualify for free and reduced price lunch. All of our schools across the district are Title I. It matters for Arizona because Phoenix Union demographics trend 10 years ahead of the city of Phoenix and 20 years ahead of the state. So if in 10 years, Phoenix Metro is majority community of color and majority low-income families, that's not going to be good for our local economy. In 20 years, it won't be good for Arizona's economy. So we truly do have both a moral imperative to support this community of schools, but we also have an economic imperative. If we want our state to be successful, if we want to have that vibrant, thriving economy that we're all working towards, we have to invest in Title I schools.
Greater Phoenix is at a tipping point. For the first time, I'm seeing venture capital come here instead of us having to go find them. This means that as a founder, I can spend more time building my business, ensuring our success and growth. as the next billion-dollar company born right here in the greater Phoenix area. This wonderful cycle of growth starts to perpetuate when we have companies that get to a point where they can exit and now sponsor the new nascent startups that are just getting going. And we want to see that ecosystem and that cycle really accelerate here in the greater Phoenix area.
The relationship between industry and universities is really important. At Barrow, we're a little different. We have some of the world's best talent in the neurosciences, and we like them to develop their ideas and bring them forward into the world. And by collaborating with industry, it helps them to advance their devices, their ideas, and ultimately perhaps spin out companies for them. I think the industry-university collaboration is important for innovation because it brings together youthful minds and creative energy together with more established techniques in industry, not to mention capital and other resources. And it's that combination of a young spirit and an established way of doing things that really can be productive.
Intel's been around for over 50 years and over 40 years in Arizona. And we basically take sand and innovate with that. The rest of that process is through people. And as we go through that innovative process and creating products that have changed the world, how we live, how we work, how we operate, Intel has come to appreciate that we're part of an ecosystem. And we need to ensure the success of that ecosystem. And so from an environmental standpoint, we need to do our part. The business community needs to do its part. The community needs to be engaged to ensure that we're able to continue living and enjoying our lives, and in our case, innovating for many, many more years to come. So environmental responsibility is not something that's an option, it's an imperative.
This is a desert. We do have limited rainfall here in the valley, and we rely on water that is derived from other parts of the state. And we need to be wise about the use of that supply. We are addressing changes in climate that come and affect us, and so it's important for us to be mindful of that and to work collaboratively to make sure that we are using that water efficiently and very wisely for our businesses here in the valley.
Smart growth principles are those principles that recognize the need for growth. However, we pay close attention to how growth can be a net positive for our community as opposed to adding potential negatives to our living environment.
Modernizing the tax system in Arizona is fundamental to building an education system that meets the workforce needs of the future. It also means building infrastructure needs, such as utilities, water, roads, things that really will make an impact for our growth into the future.
I think any region's resilience is tied to opportunities for everyone in that particular economy to be able to participate. And participating in an economy means that you have the opportunity to build generational wealth, to have adequate health care, access to capital, the ability to start or grow a business, an opportunity to really advance.
Changing demographics in Arizona represent significant opportunity for our state. It gives us a chance to rethink the way that we grow and how we share our growth. It gives us the chance to embrace new values such as sustainability, and it gives us the opportunity to watch Arizona's culture continue to flourish in new ways.
Get that a little heavy, right? So, okay, here we go. So really excited again to share with you these top imperatives that came together from a number of conversations that we've had with key business organizations, GPEC's board, a number of other community leaders. And what we find I hope nothing in here surprises you, number one. I hope, number two, nothing in here is overtly controversial. I do think the reaction to how we get to the path of excellence in each of these areas is the more challenging part. And so what I'm going to do just for the next few minutes before we have our special guest join us in a fireside chat is I'm going to unpack these rather quickly because we went through this video in 7 minutes. It was a race. And what's next is we have a more comprehensive illustration of why these particular areas matter. We're coming at this from a place of leadership. We've taken advantage of the last decade's worth of pretty intense growth, quality growth. Many of you that were here in the Great Recession saw the vulnerability or fragility of our economy, which we were over-reliant on housing and construction. Many other market economies over time, as we learned in the first series, had similar overdependence. What's different about this time is we are seeing many more manufacturing jobs created in the last decade, many more biomedical, bioscience, healthcare-related jobs that are further fortifying the base of industry that exists here today. But we are, I believe, at an inflection point. With our partners, we see what's coming in the next decade, and many of us, as from an economic architecture standpoint, believe that the next 30 to 40 years of economic output will be derived by the next 10 years worth of intentional investments and planning. That's how serious this moment of time is. So fortunately for all of us, we're seeing pretty extensive job growth. We're seeing high wage, high quality jobs, unlike we've ever seen in our history. We're seeing modern investments in transportation and innovation. Our universities, our community colleges are meeting the nimble needs of the workforce. At the same time, we need to ensure that we have a clear, crystallized business plan. Just like any business, we need a business plan for the economy that's very clear so we can assess how we're executing against our vision. So I'm going to walk through these relatively quickly so we don't run you off here too long. But when we look at the unpacking of these important 10 ingredients, and again, I'm careful to say these first 10 because these 10 are just the beginning. These 10, I think, set the stage for what will become more needs in our community over time. And we're going to have to be, as community leaders, as civic organizations, nimble enough to meet those demands as the fluid market changes. Certainly, COVID taught us a lot about workforce change, which I'll talk about here in a moment. But what's before us is an intense capacity need in CTE and STEM and engineering capacity. And I know we have a couple legislators here today that I want to applaud for the investment with the NEI, the New Economy Initiative. Many of us work very diligently with our legislative leadership to ensure that these kind of investments that are leading to, as Michael will talk about here in a moment, massive economic consequence for the next 20 years in intense areas like AI and carbon capture and many of these other areas that are profoundly going to change how industries evolve. And that's going to happen here. We have a chance to build new industries, unlike many markets in the United States. So what I think is important about the STEM component here, STEM jobs are going to grow at 2 times faster than other jobs in our economy. And all of the EV, all of the environmental technology, all of the semi-related activity that we're all excited about, well, guess what? Majority of these are STEM jobs. So we need to ensure that we're building this lasting capacity across the entirety of the region. So that, again, from that inclusive economic development lens, we need to have these hubs of workforce development systems meet the need of transitioning industry. Okay, let's quickly go to the second slide because I'm already behind. So second is Tier 1 or Title I schools. So we debated how directly to include this as an imperative. But again, I'm a math guy, I'm a finance and tax guy, so I can't shake what the numbers show. So when you look at the economic opportunity that exists within our K through 12 system, but specifically the cohort within those schools, that's going to be our future workforce. There's a tremendous amount of education innovation that often doesn't get covered in the media or even within the circles around education today, like I wish it would. At the same time, it's our calling to fortify these schools, these kids, because talent is across every socioeconomic paradigm. And we need to ensure that we're unlocking that kind of intellectual capacity and ingenuity across the entirety of the region. If I had to pick one area that's going to have massive economic consequence for our future, it's how we affect achievement within these, unfortunately, chronically underperforming schools. There's a number of schools, I should say, because I'm sure some educators are pulling their arrows back right now. There are a number of high-performing schools within the Title I network. We need to ensure that these particular offerings are deployed at scale across the entirety of the region, not just in particular areas. Third, if I transition to the entrepreneurial sector, which is also one of the critical factions of our community. We've seen massive rapid change in the entrepreneurial climate here, as well as the entrepreneurial ecosystem, as referenced by Rebecca. The ability to see inward venture capital come from other markets. And I always get this question, Chris, why don't you have more venture capital offices here? We have some great partnerships with Canal and Greyhawk and others, but why don't we see more of those? In reality, in the last 3 to 5 years, we've seen a massive shift to the way that capital not only is deployed, but the physical offices are no longer going to be placed in targeted markets. It's going to be a virtual market and a virtual model in the way that they place capital. So it's going to be incumbent upon us not only to rally the market, support our universities, support our large scale corporate enterprises that are spinning out engineering talent for new ideas, new novel concepts, and support more pathways to market for these new novel ideas and technologies. So what's going to be very important as well as we think about this entrepreneurial climate and culture is that we're embracing all facets of the term entrepreneurship. So when we look at our partnerships with the Black Chamber, Startup AZ Foundation, many others, this is about propelling all Arizona's entrepreneurs through pathways of access to capital and success. So again, the goal with all of these, and again, I know we're just touching upon 10 today, but post this event today, our goal is to bring together these coalitions of leaders to ensure that we're working together as peer organizations on a vision and a plan. So we're no longer working in silos. This is not a GPEC plan. This is a community vision and plan that we want to work together with all our peer organizations to execute against this vision. Fourth, and again, I'm going to touch on this rather quickly because you're going to hear a lot from Mary and Michael on this topic, but industry-university collaborations. That's been one of the, I would characterize dating back to 2001, maybe even before that, some would argue, but Proposition 301 and the investments to stimulate activity in industry university-led investment has not only developed the downtown core and the Phoenix Biomedical Campus, but a number of other university-led partnerships with Mayo Clinic, with Banner MD Anderson, with many other assets across this region. Those kind of resource investments yield significant economic transformation that's led by pretty significant innovation intensity and throughput. So when we talk about growing up as a community away from, no offense to my friends in construction, because we have a lot of our friends here in that vein, we'd love to see more of the product being built to satisfy the needs of the innovation capacity in our market. And so that's, again, another direction where that's a heartbeat that never stops. And we have to continue to intensify that capacity. Next, quickly, number 5 is we must continue to capitalize on environmental resiliency practices. I'm not going to get into, maybe Michael will, what causes climate change. But I will say, from a standpoint of the future opportunities that exist within that space alone, the majority of the companies GPEC's fielding from an inquiry standpoint have commitments to ESG. They already have known commitments to ensuring that they're decarbonizing, they're looking at net zero impacts to the environment. And as such, we need to ensure our utilities, our communities, our state is embracing that kind of change in our community, and we're building the next level of community. And arguably, we can do that here as a young market. So that canvas is still being painted. We have a chance, I believe, and I'm sure many others, to embrace this environmental technology shift and be the proving grounds of the world for warm weather climate. And so again, we think this is a very important one, as Jason alluded to, from Intel. And it's not just Intel. Virtually every EV company, semi company, cloud computing company, data center company is assessing their ESG commitment and how do they work with our communities to meet those objectives. We're on the second phase. We're on the downhill now. So number 6, let's talk about our history of water planning. This goes back to the early inception as a state. We've been known for great water planning. The only comment I'll make on this, because we have a lot of smarter people, smarter than myself in this room, that focus on water and water resiliency and water augmentation. Our partners on this continue to tackle the challenge of meeting our water demands of growth. And yet what's before us, I know Cheryl, I think, is on Zoom today, and many other partners. I see Nay up here and others. This is something that's an imperative that we have to come together and make sure that the next 100 years we're fortifying our water position. I believe that the change in the way we focus on carbon and the way that we use water technologies, those two that coincide together, is going to create an entirely new multi-billion, trillion-dollar industry of the future that we have a chance to be a major player in. Next is what Micah talked about, is inducing smart growth principles. Really, I would honestly say for the first time, I'm seeing our cities really judiciously look at land use, look at the acreage they have against the jobs that are intended to be created and the quality of those jobs against the wages that they create, as well as the base industry and export characteristic. That's not something we historically talked about. We were a market that was growing so fast. It was how fast could we get vertical structures up and create those jobs. Today, we're seeing massive levels of planning going on with our communities, with MAG, our partners on the transportation side. Many of our mayors are expressing leadership in this vein to ensure, we don't become, and I'll be careful saying this too, we don't want to become an LA market that just is urban sprawl. We want to ensure we have this balance of urban density as well as access for all citizens. And finally, the final three here, the modernizing of the tax system. I think this is a really interesting one because this is not about tax increases or tax cuts. I always get that question when I go meet with the Democratic caucus. It's one thing. I meet with the Republican caucus. It's another. This is about the stewardship of our state. It's about growing the pie. It's about being very surgical with respect to our tax system so we can continue to grow the pie while maintaining a competitive position in our tax code, all the while ensuring that we have a fair and balanced tax system. And so my commitment on that is I want to ensure that our organizations work together to have that lens. How do we become, and continue to become, I should say, a formative player in the 21st century competitive economy? The tax system is one piece of that. And I know we have a lot of legislators in the room, heavily focused on that as well in terms of building sound, balanced fiscal policy. And finally, number 9 and number 10, strengthening the middle class. I think one thing that's important, again, being a data guy you can't shake, is that the significant portion of the middle class in America began about middle of post-Second World War, the contraction position of the middle class, where you've seen earnings income contracting against the top 20% and the bottom 20%. So we need to ensure that we're broadening the base of access and opportunity through jobs and through quality jobs in our community. And I can attest that there's a lot of organizations in this region heavily focused on this. I had a call with Kimber a couple of days ago, Kimber Lanning, Local First Arizona, with Carla over at United Way. These organizations are working really bottoms up to ensure that we collectively are providing the programs and infrastructure needed to help entrepreneurs, to help those that need healthcare access. All of these areas are going to be just as important as building this innovation economy. We have to be doing both, and doing both very aggressively. And finally, we do believe that unlocking the potential of our demographic shift is not only a benefit, it's an opportunity of our generation. And as we see, I think Stephanie and others talked about this demography shift. And not only are we the fastest growing market in the country, but really diversity is our greatest strength. How we embrace that strength is going to be critically important. And so again, what I hope we come out of today with in this second of the two-part series is that this energizes the market to dream big, to be ambitious, to put partnerships in place. I see Rich here, who's going to lead an incredible education strategy coming up. Together, we're much stronger. And I do believe that it's a very important time for our economy to embrace that change and really build towards the most dynamic, novel, innovative, risk-taking community in the United States. So I believe it's our time. So with that, I'm going to transition this back to Eric, and he is going to, I believe, Ray.
A round of applause first, because wow.
They told me, no longer than 20 minutes. I almost did that. So Eric, I'm going to kick it back off to you and introduce our just very special guest speakers today. And then we'll come back up for the close. So thank you.
No, great job. And you mentioned this is heavy for the morning. I know it is, but so critical. And Chris, me personally, as a business owner, as a father in this community, you want your community leaders to step up. You and this, I think I always like absorb the moment of things. And so after hearing you speak and then just looking around this room, it just gives you so much confidence to know what we're doing in this community. The names you mentioned, you know, Carla and Robin, I look at Stavros there, and I just know from the conversations I've had too, this community is really stepping up, and you've been a huge part, and GPEC's been a huge part of leading the charge. So again, thank you for doing all that, putting all that together. Speaking of community leaders, okay, let's bring up Dr. Michael Crow and Dr. Mary Walshok. We're going to be doing a little bit of a fireside chat here, and while they come up, I'll read their bios that we have listed there. Mary, I can help you. I didn't write it. Come on up, Mary.
I'm good.
You got
I'm
it?
good. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Dr. Michael Crow is an educator, knowledge enterprise architect, science and technology policy scholar, and higher education leader. He became the 16th president of Arizona State University in July 2002 and has spearheaded ASU's rapid and groundbreaking transformative evolution into one of the world's best public metropolitan research universities. As a model new American university, ASU simultaneously demonstrates comprehensive excellence, inclusivity, representative of the ethnic and socioeconomic diversity of the United States, and consequential societal impact. Dr. Michael Crow. Yes. Yours is just as impressive. Don't worry. Dr. Mary Walshok has been on the faculty of the University of California, San Diego since 1972. The focus of her career has been understanding and fostering the growth of local and regional economies throughout the world. She is the Associate Vice Chancellor of Public Programs at UCSD. She was a co-founder of the San Diego nonprofit Connect, which encourages entrepreneurs and startups, and is credited with emphasizing its bottom-up organizational structure. Now, much of her work focuses on the development of regional innovation clusters, drawing from her experience and connections within San Diego, particularly how globalization and rapid changes in technology are affecting the social dynamics and economic challenges of regions across America. Dr. Mary Walshok is with us. Quick reminder at this point, for those of you watching online, Chris Camacho is going to join us back on stage after the fireside chat for some Q&A. So if you want to start submitting questions, feel free. And again, for those of you in attendance, we have the QR code located around the room for those questions. But without further ado, I will just turn the floor over to you guys so you guys can begin a lovely little intimate fireside chat here for all of us.
You know, thank you. What's interesting, and hopefully we can get a lot of discussion and dialogue going here, which is, you know, I don't know that people realize the absolutely wonderful moment in which we're all here. Set aside all of the stresses and the strains from the pandemic and all the things that are going on as the global economy moves forward. But, you know, we're no longer residents of a poor, uneducated, suffering species on a rural planet in some distant arm of a galaxy. This place is moving. I mean, it is unbelievable when you look at what our species has been able to do, where we are, how we're moving forward, how we're achieving things, how we're expanding, and how we're really able to roll into the future. And so in spite of all of the complexities that we're facing, and I'll just put a couple of comments here just to contextualize, it's literally unbelievable. I mean, 10 years ago at ASU, we had 6,000 engineering students that had below a 70% freshman retention rate. That is 32% of them couldn't get through the freshman year in engineering. Today, this semester, we have 27,000 engineering students, 18,000 on campus, 9,000 online with a 90% freshman retention rate. We have more women and minorities in engineering than we had students in engineering 10 years ago. I mean, just to give you some sense now, only in Arizona could you really find a place with so few constraints where you can just think it up and then do it. And so what I'm excited about with Mary being here is there's about 65 cities on the planet, San Diego and Phoenix are two of them, that represent the way the species is moving forward. They represent the way that we're evolving. These urban communities supported by the rural communities that are networked into them are the ways and the places in which the economies of the future are being laid down. And the economies of the future, to be clear, are going to be dramatically different. 3/4 of all vehicles that are used in commercial practice will be driven by machines. But who will be the people managing those vehicles being driven by machines? And I'm going to say some things, you're going to be doubters and so forth and so on, but you're not being honest with yourself, or you don't realize where things are going. We're moving to a point now where the economy is going to be increasingly built around what you can discover, what you can build, more businesses, more opportunities. I'll use one example. I thought that Chris kind of even understated it a little bit. So global climate change. I mean, I can give you the explanation for why it's an issue. Who cares? Let me tell you the opportunity. The opportunity is an unbelievable set of multi-trillion-dollar sectors on a global economy that are going to come out of managing carbon, managing water, managing the flow of materials, managing the whole notion in which we make decisions, improving the flow of everything that we're doing. I was talking to the president of Johnson Controls the other day, which is a 100,000 person global corporation. I said, you guys are going to be rich beyond fathom. It's going to be unbelievable because every molecule, every drop of water is going to be counted, assessed, measured, flowed in a different direction. There's a new startup company started by an ASU graduate that just got going, that just raised $100 million in capitalization. What do you think they do? They're going to count carbon. You say, what do you mean they're going to count carbon? Carbon's going to be a commodity. You're going to extract it from the atmosphere. You're going to use it for certain things. You're going to trade it. You're going to value it. You're going to move things in forward in different ways. We have a new thing being built on the Tempe campus right now, which is a carbon capture chemical tree that one of our faculty members invented. And we have a spinoff company invested in by American and European investors. There's an entire carbon capture moment. The Exxon Corporation today decided to spend tens of billions of dollars, $150 billion in the next several years on carbon capture and enhancing their green footprint as a global energy company. You're like, how is this even possible? Or am I reading some strange newspaper that's not actually real? I mean, I hope you're keeping up with the opportunity that sits here in front of us. And so Mary is a globally recognized specialist on how urban environments and cities and metropolitan areas and regions evolve. And we're certainly evolving here in Phoenix, in metropolitan Phoenix, and in the Sun Corridor from Nogales all the way up to Prescott. You know, we've got tremendous, tremendous opportunities as one of the 10 megapolitan regions in the country, where 85% of the economic growth and 90% of the population growth is going to occur within these regions. So the key for us in this region is, how do we know where we're going? Because so many things happened here because of smart, opportunistic people who just came in. I still think of Metro Phoenix as the world's largest mining camp. Meaning there's stuff here. So what do we mine here? What is the substance that we mine? Photons from the sun. That's what we mine. So it's the sun rush. And so we have almost 5 million people here in the Metroplex, and going to grow to 10 million or more in the Sun Corridor. 12 million probably is our estimate. It's going to be one of the leading places on the planet. But we're still kind of a mining camp, and I can walk you through what that means. We got, like, in many places, the first buildings ever built, the second building ever built. We've got huge emphasis on real estate and making things happen and moving people here and people coming here for the sun rush and so forth. And what I can say to you is that that's not going to be adequate to be as competitive as we need to be, not to be competitive solely from the perspective of being economically competitive. It's not just about economically competitive. How do we make the place that Arizonans really want? How do we make that happen? People here want, we know this from the work of the Center for the Future of Arizona, where a buddy of mine is the head of that. And so my wife, and so my roommate, I call her. And so that says that Arizonans, it's fabulous what Arizonans want. It's fabulous where there's commonality. We spend so much time wasting our energy watching CNN or watching Fox and listening to all the places where we disagree. And those networks are built on the notion of disagreement. They don't focus on where we agree. There's all kinds of places that we agree. So one of the things that the people in Arizona agree on is they want blue skies and clean air and clean water. Who doesn't? Of course they do. It's an obvious, but it's a huge, huge thing. Can you build an economy around that? You can definitively build huge elements of an economy around that. Just taking one of the imperatives that Chris was talking about on the issue of water. And I'll say one thing just to make sure that it gets on the table for today, and that is all of our underachievement in educational outcomes, all of the complaining and the moaning and the whining by the educational enterprise that's out there. it's all just a reflection in the mirror of themselves. The failure of our education system to achieve the competitiveness that we need is the fault of the educational system. It's not the fault of the politicians. It's not the fault of the families. It's not the fault of people who are not very bright. It's not the fault of poor people going to colleges. In fact, I don't even understand why we constantly keep talking about, well, these schools are all filled with poor kids. Who cares? They should be filled with people that are going to graduate from high school with 21st century degrees and move on to something else. And so I just want to make sure that one of the things I hope that we can do in the evolution of this place is actually start taking responsibility for the outcomes of the community itself, including the educational outcomes. And so, Mary,
okay,
you know, you have seen everything. I was a Navy child, Navy brat.
He grew up
in San Diego 4 different times. We lived there, born in San Diego, lived in Imperial Beach, all the beautiful spots, Imperial Beach, San Ysidro, National City, Chula Vista. I mean, just fantastic. And so,
not La Jolla.
No. So we used to drive to La Jolla with my dad. We'd go on like a Sunday drive, and he'd say, "Someday, if you work hard, you'll be able to know the people that he says you'll be able to know the people that live here, and maybe cut their grass." And so literally, that's what he used to tell us. And so. Grunion hunting on the Strand there, but north of Imperial Beach, south of Coronado. I mean, that was us growing up, learning how to, you know, ride the waves and stuff like that. And then we moved around a lot. But so San Diego, by the way, when I lived there in the 50s and the 60s, was my dad got robbed, I think, multiple times. Our house got broken into. It was kind of a dump downtown. I remember it was, you know, there were some nice beaches that, you know, you could hang out
Lots
with.
of bars.
Yeah, lots of bars and
The military.
Yeah, basically,
and other amenities.
it was a Navy town. So, you know, it was like, so we lived in Norfolk, Virginia, San Diego. We lived in Jacksonville, you know, these kinds of places. And they all were kind of the same to us. They were places you didn't really want to be. And it's definitely not that now. And it's still a Navy town, meaning it's still a Navy town with the SEALs there and the fleet there and the air station there and the Marine Corps recruitment depot there. You know, all that stuff is there. How did it talk about the mindset shift in San Diego?
So can I tell you 2 personal things? You think about Arizona's mining, and I think about it as cowboys. My Swedish father, who was 6'2" and blonde, came to the United States to go to the University of Chicago, and he said, "Chicago is just like Stockholm. I'm getting out of here." And he went and became a cowboy here for 10 years. And so there were 2 magazines on our coffee table when I was growing up. My mother, right, who liked cities, subscribed to the New Yorker, and my father to Arizona Highways.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, 18 years of Arizona Highways until I went off to college. So that's one thing I wanted to share with you. So I have a deep affection and respect for this space. I learned to shoot. I learned to ride. We went, you know the lifestyle of the cowboy, and he lived it, you know, like any convert would. But the second thing I'd like to tell
my dad only made us learn how to take apart and put together a match 45 caliber
competition
competition pistol blindfolded. But go ahead.
No, I just had to shoot it. I didn't have to put it together. But a second thing that I think is important, I'm a bit older than Michael is, but when my husband took a job, he was the first one to take a job in San Diego. Back in 1969, I burst into tears and said, "How can we live there? There's nothing there but the Navy and the zoo." You know, I mean, and your point about the Navy, it was the military was 60% of the GDP of the region in the late 40s and early 50s. It's still 24%. But let me tell you how I think of the military. They're one of our biggest customers because the defense contracting firms, right? A lot of the suppliers, a lot of the construction companies benefit from the demands that come from the military. But what I'd like to do in just a couple of minutes, because Michael knows I've spent time in St. Louis, in Indianapolis, in Seattle, I mean, weeks at a time, Pittsburgh, talking to people about what their regional aspirations are. And I'm very impressed with the assets that this region has built and with the strategies that Chris articulated. But what I want to ask is, so what? what is achieved if one really leverages these assets and commits to these strategies. So I'm doing this not to brag about San Diego, but to tell you in a forum like this what people want to hear. How many new businesses did we create this year?
In San Diego.
In San Diego. We created 400 high-tech companies in San Diego. Is that a good number? These are new business formation, a lot of them venture back. Yeah, in St. Louis, where they have Washington University and a lot of other good stuff, they created 45. We're doing pretty well. Oh, okay, Mary. How many jobs did we create last year in San Diego? I'm talking about COVID, guys. This is the last year. Well, actually, we grew about 16,000 jobs in the $100,000 a year plus. Why does that matter? They buy homes, they buy cars, they buy baseball tickets, they go to restaurants. Okay, I get it. But how are we doing? Are we creating any wealth in this city? Ooh, you want to talk about wealth creation? We've got data over the last 10 years in the growth of philanthropy from the hundreds of millions to the billions. The latest family-based real estate development foundation, 1.4 billion in assets, the Prebis Foundation. The man made his money in real estate. He reinvested his money with our friend Malin Burnham and others in
Malin's
scientific.
a 94-year-old mover and shaker in San Diego.
In a center for cancer research, in all kinds of programs. So what I'm trying to give you a sense of is, why should we care about all the capacity you're building or all the strategies Chris is articulating? Because it creates wealth. So my third joke on myself, not just that my father was a cowboy, but I am a PhD in sociology with Swedish parents. Now that means
communist,
liberal.
communist.
Yeah. In the United States, you would call me a communist. So the hardest thing for me to learn, Michael, in my 30s, when I came to San Diego and started working with real estate developers and innovators and entrepreneurs, is wealth is not a dirty word.
Right.
You cannot create jobs if you aren't creating wealth. You can't have great schools and universities if you aren't creating wealth. And so it's not either or, it's not the capitalists versus the working blokes. You need these strategies that support innovation and entrepreneurship at the same time that you're building inclusive talent development systems. And so regions that are getting traction, like Phoenix and like San Diego, we're a little bit ahead of you, are doing very well.
And then related to that, just to make sure that people understand it, the forces of creative destruction in Schumpeterian innovation models is new things blow up old things, move on.
Right. So Qualcomm didn't exist when I was first hired by the university. And I keep saying it may not exist by the time I die.
It probably won't.
But the cycle of Qualcomm created wealth, created capacity, created talent, created a whole set of assets that the community.
I was on the phone with the Qualcomm board chair the other day, and a friend of mine was just added to that board, Sylvia Acevedo, and so what we were talking about was exactly that. So they're the most advanced research-oriented group around building, new kinds of things, new kinds of systems, all that kind of stuff. And so they're even concerned about, they've probably spun out also 50 companies from the people that have left their company, or he said 80 companies. And so he doesn't, they have no plan in actually being around. And so this is one of the things that we have to get into our mindset also, is that stability is good for a while, so long as you're building stable platforms moving forward. You've got little, think of it like, I remember when I was going on a Marine Corps obstacle course at Quantico, you had to jump from one platform out to another platform, up and out to another platform, up and out to another platform. And then by the time you slipped off the top one and fell down, it hurt a lot. And so you wanted to make sure you could do it. So it's the same thing. It's jumping up and out each time, and the old platform is no longer of use.
So there are three factors, in my opinion, that give you some insight into whether or not you're making that, regions, making that journey. One, you got to be starting lots and lots of businesses. And I'm interviewed every time there's a big merger or a company moves, say, oh my God, the sky is falling in San Diego. And I go, we have 800 biotech companies. They employ close to 90,000 people. We're fine. One big corporation doesn't do that. And what's so important is the talent stays, your point.
To shift.
And they start the next company and the next company.
Because it's an ecosystem.
It's an ecosystem because they want to live there, which is lifestyle.
And they want to live
Thank
here.
you,
They want to live here.
Phoenix. Thank you, San Diego.
Yes.
These are good places to live. And philanthropy helps build concert halls.
Yes.
And helps build sporting
Universities.
centers and universities. No, but people want to be in places, the talent you need. But the two other things that I think are important to consider in terms of outcomes one wants to reach for, and that is increasing external investment in the region. And two forms of external investment that a lot of people don't think about. We all think about venture capital, right? And that's important. San Diego in COVID, $8 billion in external venture capital.
Since COVID.
Since COVID, yeah. But let's put that to the side. Let's talk about real estate. And Michael and I were talking about this. The downtown of San Diego, I don't know how many of you know downtown, but a team that is known as IQHQ, which before that was Biomedical Realty, which sold to Blackstone for I don't know how many billions, is putting over $2 billion in 8 square blocks of what they're calling life science and tech office and business incubation space. Not hotels, not shopping malls. Walk 6 blocks in to what was Horton Plaza, Ernie Hahn. Fantastic. I was there at the opening of it as a young academic. Beautiful commercial shopping space. Stockdale Partners, LA based, all New York money, is investing $500 million in turning that into technology office.
Well, go back to the first project and this last one, because what I don't think folks realize is that this little cheap 9-year-old thing, this Fitbit that I'm wearing, it's 9 years old. It's got 9 years of data. I mean, it's a cheap tinker toy compared to where we're going. So people don't realize that all things are moving to bits, bots, data, flow, decisions. People do not realize where everything is headed. They have no sense. Everything is being turned on its head. And a place like San Diego now is an industrial center.
Yeah.
So the factories of the future.
It's a 21st century industrial center.
The city, the downtown itself is an industrial center. Now we understand that we're getting some things going here in Phoenix, and a lot of stuff are happening. You know, the Wexford ASU building, that's, you know, a spec-based research building. That's a little bit more, you know, moving stuff around, not only electrons and photons, but liquids and, you know, cells and so forth and so on. But I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's amazing. And the Padres, our lovely Padres, have a fabulous parking lot where the University Medical School was doing all of the vaccines. They've decided to develop the parking lot into a science and technology business and office hub.
And what are the kind of jobs that go into a place like that?
So let me describe the tenants. So think about the main floor. Think about live, learn, play, research. It all comes together, right? Like on a university campus. So your first and second floors are commercial. They're restaurants, they're stores, they're gyms, and, you know, all providing all kinds of amenities for the people who live and work downtown. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth floors are offices and labs and conference rooms and meeting spaces. And so you're blending in this new form of real estate development. You're really creating lifestyle as well as a workplace.
So in that spirit, you know, we just opened this semester a 17-story building in downtown Phoenix. The first 3 floors are creative spaces. So we put in a popular music studio that's open 24/7 for students to create their own music. It's unbelievable, state of the art, as good as any studio in Los Angeles. We put in a fashion design thing for kids to create expressive outcomes. Everybody that's in the dorm, 500 of these rooms are filled with students starting companies, starting music businesses, starting film companies, starting social enterprises. And it is hard for me to get people here to understand, like, here's what I get for that. It's like, why would you do that?
So I can refer you to the research. Michael, you may not even know this. We all know Stanford, right? And we all think about it as the incubator. Well, it turns out.
And we ridicule them, but go ahead.
Right. But it turns out at Stanford, it's one dorm.
Yes.
If you trace, right?
Yeah.
The last 20 years where all these
where those people
freaky
came,
bright
yeah.
kids came, they all lived in the same dorm.
Yeah, which built a culture in
overlooked
itself.
who-
Yeah.
There was a culture within the dorm, within Stanford. And Kathy Koo, who's
Yeah.
their head of tech transfer and a good friend, says to me, 90% of our faculty could care less about industry, but the 10% who do make all the difference. But the kids,
Yes.
So your point
Yeah.
about living in a dorm and being in creative spaces, it helps to incubate.
We've had
innovation and creativity.
1,100 student-based company startups
Yeah.
in the last 24 months. One yesterday announced that it was now acquiring other companies.
Yeah.
So it had achieved a number of certain kinds of outcomes, and we just raised our $1.1 billion for our faculty-based spinouts in the last 10 years. And so the reason I say those things is that before 15 years ago, our culture wasn't there. So our culture,
Your culture is there now.
the university culture
Right.
has to evolve also. So.
But zoning and real estate development that has this sort of 21st century focus and recognizes that if you can create spaces where innovation happens and talent aggregates, you can actually make money on it, but you can also help build the regional economy.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm very, very interested in what are the outcomes. How many new $100,000 plus jobs do you want 5 years from now or 10 years from now? How many new companies do you want to start every year, particularly in the tech high wage space? And
But
those
so
are the
here's
conversations.
the meetings right before COVID. I'd go to meetings, I'd talk about this stuff, and literally one guy comes up to me and says, "You're just a dumbass," and he says, "You," and I'm just quoting him, and I said, "Okay,
It is the West, right?
No, you sound like my dad now," and so because my dad would refer to me as that from time to time. And so he was usually right, but nonetheless, still a little insulting. And so, but here's the reason that he was saying, he says, people don't want to go to college. We need more construction workers in Arizona. And I said, actually, we need both. We need fantastic state-of-the-art construction workers, and we need as many college graduates as we can convince to still live here after they graduate from college and to move here from other places. So one of the things that's odd in Phoenix is that we have lots of college graduates that move here, and their average age when they move here is almost 60.
Yeah.
And we're not in the top 50 cities in attracting college graduates under the age of 30.
Yeah. So that's
Now,
another indicator.
Those are things that we ought to be paying very, very close attention to. But the guy literally said, "You dumbass, you're working against me." And I said, "I won't even tell you what I think of you, but go ahead."
But I'm looking at Chris because our Economic Development Corporation is now tracking mobility into the city.
Yes.
And what we learned, which is not good news for Maryland, Indiana, or Pennsylvania, is that the majority of the graduates of engineering schools from the University of Illinois, from the University of Maryland, from places like Carnegie Mellon,
Penn State,
and Penn State, come to Colorado and California. Why shouldn't Arizona be on that list?
Yeah. Well,
We have to grow our own, but we also have to attract our own. But you said something that is really important in our town. And I'm now a grandma, okay?
I'm a grandpa.
What a lot of people tell you in St. Louis and Indianapolis, I want my children to be able to live and work here.
That's what people want.
I want my grandchildren to be able to live here. But if their parents can't get good jobs here, so there's a very, very personal outcome of all the ideas we're discussing, which is you can create a place where people want to stay, they
Yeah.
want to reinvest, and they're confident. I lose one job, I can get another job. We started 400 new companies last year. You know, it's okay to change jobs. I'm not changing my region. And there's a fabulous woman who you may know, Annalise Saxenian,
Yeah.
who was Dean of the School of Information Technology. And she wrote about the differences between the Boston area and the Silicon Valley, Bay Area. And she said, what differentiates the Silicon Valley is people don't identify with companies, they identify with a place. I live in the Valley. I work in the Valley. What company do you work for? You ask people in Boston, I work for Wang, I work for so. They're company identified. And she said, part of the churn,
Yeah.
the churn in innovation is tied to people are wedded to their place.
We hear this a lot. So about 70% of our graduates, we're now the largest STEM graduating institution in the United States. And when we started the quest, we were around 30th. So we've taken over 29 other schools ahead of us. About 70% of those graduates stay in Arizona initially, including most of the people that come here as out-of-state students. They stay here, but they're not still here 10 years later. It goes down dramatically. And it goes down dramatically because most of them are going, believe it or not, most of them are going to California. And they're not going to California. So by the way, if you're deluded by this notion that everyone's moving here from California because everything's so horrible in California, the answer is California and Arizona have a massive exchange going on.
Right.
And I don't want to tell you who's moving to California. The people moving to California from Arizona are under 30. And the people moving to Arizona from California are over 50. And so it's a completely different transformation that's going on. And so what we need to be able to do is first embrace and understand how we leverage from California, which is something that we're trying to do in many, many of the things that we're doing through connections and linkages and partnerships and alignments and corporate relationships and so forth. But then also on this intergenerational, multi-generational thing, trying to create a situation where people can now start thinking about their families settling here over the entirety of a multi-generational
boy, has
existence.
COVID underscored the value of that. I mean, I think it's a massive cultural
Yes.
shift. And you know, it's interesting, we talk about metrics. Pradeep Khosla, who is the chancellor of my university and my boss, what he heard from civic leaders when he came.
His son's a student at ASU.
I
by the way.
know that. He told me. But what he heard is, sure, you have a great engineering school. Sure, you have great physics and chemistry, but they all leave.
Right.
And so he said as a university goal, as have you, we want to make sure our graduates can work here if they want to.
Yeah.
And guess what? The numbers are going up. Another metric,
Mhm.
are our graduates staying here or are they going elsewhere?
Right.
If I were a taxpayer in Illinois, and of course there's a lot of trouble right now at the University of Illinois with taxpayers, they're not retaining the talent they develop. And we hopefully are in the West. And then the only other thing that I would add is a metric, and it has to do with amenities of place. And we have surfers, right? And the
Yes.
ocean.
Yeah.
You have golfers.
You have to have sharks that eat off those eat off those guys' legs. But go ahead.
When I speak around the country, I say, you know, amenities of place, everybody says, oh, well, you have the ocean. That's why you're so successful. I said, look, my parents are from Sweden. And I've done a lot of work in Stockholm and I've written about, and you know, Sweden is very, very productive in terms of entrepreneurial companies and it's not gazelles. What do we call them? The unicorns. Unicorns. It's been very, very successful.
They also have those dragon tattoo girls over there. I mean,
got it. You got it.
Very, very, very tough.
That
women.
very dark undercurrent in Swedish culture. But you're going to laugh. But you know, Sweden has more church choirs than any country in the world. If you like to cross-country ski and you want to sing in a church choir, there's no better place to live than Sweden, okay? And there are people who really prefer to do that.
Right.
And I joke about people
Because
in
of
Seattle.
community. Because of community.
It's a community. And think about Seattle. What do you do in Seattle in the fog and the rain? Well, you wear your backpack and your Gore-Tex and you drink lots of coffee and you climb mountains. It's a lifestyle. and when you talk to engineers and scientists. So lifestyle is important.
Absolutely.
And so Phoenix has lifestyle amenities. Seattle has lifestyle amenities. San Diego has lifestyle amenities. And we need to leverage those. In our case, we led with lifestyle. I think we have to lead with innovation and opportunity and multi-generational family culture, but also a lifestyle that supports it.
So how does it's kind of interesting to me. So you know, we deal with, at the university, obviously, we're dealing with all the sectors. We're dealing with the unbelievably burgeoning software sector here. I had a meeting with the president of Axon the other day, you know, looking at non-lethal weapons, and he said, well, you guys are probably opposed to working on weapons. I said, you must not know the full portfolio of our Department of Defense research, because we got all kinds of gizmos that help the enemies of the United States to be destroyed. But we're also, and believe me, we do. But we also have a deep intensity to focus on non-lethal weapons. So what was interesting is this notion of, I've just noticed that many sectors that are present here aren't present in this room. They don't participate in the economic development oriented discussions. It's more the traditional base businesses that make up the foundation of the community as it has evolved. And so how do you evolve this group? How do you evolve the neural center of a place as it is evolving? Right. How do you make things happen in terms of mindset shifting?
So what's happened in San Diego is that integration has happened, but in the last 10 to 15 years. Not
so Qualcomm and real estate, they eventually sat at the same table?
They're at the same table. So if you look at our EDC, you've got Northrop Grumman, you've got Qualcomm, you've got Illumina, you've got Viasat, but you've also got JM Real Estate, you've got banks.
And what about the biotech? What about the biotechs?
And biotech, Illumina is a big biotech.
But I mean, like the smaller ones.
Oh, the smaller ones don't play a lot.
Yeah, they don't play.
They don't have time and money.
Yeah.
So they have to be at a certain level of success. But what I think is important in San Diego, and I think I'm speaking accurately, is the war for talent and the war for external capital is so fierce that everybody pulls together, right? To make the pitches, to make sure everybody has what they need.
So let's talk about that, because I don't think that there's yet in Metro Phoenix a war for talent. We fight it at the university. There, of the top people that we hire, none are just walking around in Chandler at the moment, you know, waiting to be appointed, you know, professor of biophysics in, you know, some alien life form that we're studying. And so it's just not that. So this war for talent and what it takes to get the talent and bring the talent in and then keep the talent. Talk about that, because I think that's really important.
Well, I think, and I'm going to go back to my roots, because I've been in Phoenix over 35 years talking about this, because it was 35 years ago. We lost a big bid to get the microcomputer consortium that was led by Bobby Inman, that went to Austin, Texas. And then 2 years later, we lost Sematech to Virginia. And that infuriated the downtown business community. Why would anybody go to Austin or Northern Virginia? We're talking 30 plus years ago. Austin's cool now. When you could come to San Diego. And literally a delegation of business people came up and talked to Dick Atkinson, then the chancellor. I was in the room. I was a young hire,
I know Dick very well. I've known him for a long time.
And said, damn it, we got to do a better job of creating a more innovative entrepreneurial.
So the business
culture.
community goes to the university to kick the university's butt to do more things. Yes, exactly.
Whereas the university here is kicking the business butt.
I don't know about that, but we're interested in people demanding more from us. We are definitely interested in that. So.
But I think what was important about Dick, remember he was head of the National Science Foundation when Bayh-Dole came on. And he also helped SBIR, STTR.
Small Business
Innovation Grants and Loans. And so literally 7 or 8, that's all it was. Business guys, I was then the staff to them as a young dean, came together and said, well, we need to go out. And may I tell this story? Because it's an important story.
Just a funny story about Dick.
I'm a sociologist.
Well, let me tell this story about Dick. So I go to see Dick when he's the president of the University of California when I was first appointed for this job. And I said, now, Dick, I know I'm not allowed to look in your eyes. and I'll just sort of be like this when I'm looking at you in your office. So I literally went in that way as a joke to him because I knew him relatively well. I said, I'm not allowed to look in your eyes anymore because you're the all-powerful president of the University of California system. And he says, you have no idea how terrible this job is, but go ahead.
But I want to tell a story that I think is really important because I was a young professor of sociology.
Yes.
And so the chancellor said, go out and interview the business community and go out and interview some of these unknowns like Irwin Jacobs,
Yes.
who are starting
Qualcomm,
little companies, which became Qualcomm.
And he became a billionaire.
And find out what they want. And here's what I heard. I talked to the tech guys like Irwin. They said, the business community here sucks. I can't get the legal work I need. I can't get the kind of accounting I need. The executive search firms don't know how to help me.
Because they're all sector specific to
they're all in real estate and tourism.
Yeah.
And we're doing tech and we're doing government contracting. We've got, you know, external investors. And so you got to teach the business community about technology. Then I go to the business community. I'd love to work with those tech companies, but those jerks, all they think about is their technology. Gee whiz, look what we can do with carbon. Look what we can do with 5G. And I can't get them to focus on what's the product. What's the product that creates the business that then creates the jobs and the wealth? And so we realized we had a two-way issue.
Yeah.
University people and researchers had to learn how to better communicate the value of their technology.
It's not easy
with business, and it's not easy
because they all think they're geniuses when they're not.
But they also had to understand better the dynamics of business. And so we started with a series, which was some of the early entrepreneurs like Irwin Jacobs, you know, who's part of Warren Buffett's giving group and just gave us his fourth $100 million gift.
I've sat in Irwin's living room in Wilhoit.
But at that time, his wife worked for a travel agent. We used to have brown bag lunches. So, I mean, you know, everybody comes from somewhere. But what happened was the business community came out in droves to hear, who's this guy, Irwin Jacobs? Who's this guy, Peter Price? Who's this guy, Ivor Royston, who just sold a biotech company, which was partially funded by Genentech and Brooke Byers, to Lilly. And in that interaction, always with wine and cheese, always in a lovely setting, not an academic setting, you began to build connections and a sense of mutuality. I don't know if that's what Phoenix needs or wants, but I'm just describing San Diego to you. So you had the military here, you had real estate here, you had business service providers here, and you had the academic R&D community here. And getting them all in the room, and the excuse was to come and here's somebody who's doing something really interesting and innovative, and in a way that's accessible, but also helping people who are committed. What I've learned from interviewing entrepreneurs, Ivor Royston, he watched his grandmother die of cancer. He's an oncologist, and his life's work has been, I want to find a cure for cancer. He knew he wanted to do that when he was 16. He didn't say, I want to be a multi-billionaire.
You know, most entrepreneurs are driven by some
They're
other
not driven by money, particularly in the tech sector. They're driven by solving problems. And so meeting guys like that and connecting, common bonds were built. So it may be, Chris, that there's something in the economic development community that you're helping to grow here, an opportunity to facilitate more deliberate interactions between, if you will, the innovators and the geeks and the local folks who understand how to turn things into real business and how to make things work.
So we just have a minute left. And so you brought up the university. So UC San Diego was only founded in the 1960s as a branch campus of the University of California. Its precursor was the Scripps Institution for Oceanography, which was founded in 1903. And then San Diego had what ASU used to be, which was the San Diego State equivalent. So ASU was the equivalent of San Diego State. It was sort of the people's university in an evolving city and so forth. And then ASU morphed itself into a research intensive university that didn't abandon the San Diego State mission. So it sort of combined San Diego State and UC San Diego. But the problem is culturally, and you can just give a short answer for this. So much of the local culture doesn't even see the metamorphosis of ASU. I mean, it's still San Diego State in the mind of a lot of people. And there's nothing wrong with San Diego State, but they don't see that we're also UCSD and then some because of the nature of technology, by the way that we can work. So how central was the UC San Diego ingredient to the transformation of San Diego, and just how essential was that?
Well, I mean, it was absolutely essential in terms of the research infrastructure because it brought talent, and that talent validated companies, so venture capitalists would invest, right? So you have a world-class researcher who's on the scientific advisory board of a small company, you get money more easily. But we're on a journey now. Our journey is to be more like you.
Yes.
Our chancellor.
That's what I keep telling Pradeep.
Right. No, but he says it to us. No, I'm serious. He's saying it's not enough to be a great research university. You have to have an inclusiveness mission because the West is changing.
And scale.
The demographics are changing. We are not a designated Hispanic serving university.
We are.
You are. What does he say to me? I'm opening a big downtown center, park and market for the university, concert hall, bistro, lectures, courses. And it's all about building our presence with the demography that is our region. So ASU maybe started at one place, we started in another place, but God, we're looking more and more alike.
Yeah. Well, I told him
the 21st century.
I told him we were going to crush him.
Oh. Well,
first we'd steal his son and then we would crush him.
So anyway, I hope this has been sort of useful to you, right? We should throw it open to a little Q&A.
Chris, I think somebody's coming up. Yeah.
Absolutely, guys. Round of applause, please, for Dr. Crow and Dr. Walshok. And Chris, I think we're welcoming you back onto the stage. We're going to cheer for you. What a great discussion, guys. And I was talking to Colleen before the event, and one of the things we were discussing was, sometimes even as business owners and business leaders, we get siloed talking to ourselves and trying to figure our own problems out or celebrating ourselves. And we can do that as a community too sometimes. So it was great to hear the dialogue today between the two communities. Fantastic. Okay, the Q&A questions are coming in. Thank you so much. Colleen will be feeding me those via text, but I do want to start with one that was already pre-submitted, and you guys touched on this a little bit, but regarding the pandemic and people leaving the workforce, and I believe, I don't remember the stat off, I think it was 4.4 million people leaving their jobs in September. So how do we think differently about careers, education, talent allocation with all of this going on? And where do we see this moving forward? And what do we need to do to be successful?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I'll just make a comment. I mean, it turns out that food is a useful thing for humans to have, and to get food, you have to have money. And so what I'm saying is this thing about slight perturbations in the workforce or people coming in and out of the workforce. I mean, what we're at the very early stages of that the pandemic really accelerated is the transformation of the workforce into a much more powerful, much more creative, much more agile, much more adaptive thing. And if you sort of step back and zen it just a little bit, just zen yourself just a little bit, and you start rethinking how work can be done, and you use technology to your advantage, I think that there's unbelievable opportunities. People now know they can work in different ways, do things in different ways, operate in different ways. The thing that people don't realize is the impact of the technology shifts. And so if when my dad got out of the Navy, he always wanted to be a truck driver, so he went to truck driver school. And I rode with him on a few of his runs between Nogales, Arizona and Detroit, carrying auto parts from the border up. And I said, Dad, how long are you going to do this? I mean, this is like hard work. I mean, and so this was unbelievable. And so those kinds of runs within 15 years, and you can say that I have no idea what I'm talking about. I would disagree with you. I have some idea of what I'm talking about. There aren't going to be any of those drivers. None of them.
Mary, you want to weigh in?
Well, that's why I think place matters.
Yeah.
It's sort of, where do people work, not where are the companies?
Yes.
And increasingly,
that's a really important point. Where do people want to be to work, not where are the companies? It's not going to make,
because the companies will hire people, right? Where there's an aggregation of talent, they'll get hired. So
Just on the side, so Stanford's been rating a lot of our highly technical, specialized, non-faculty staff.
Yeah.
Paying them substantially higher wages, Silicon Valley level wages, and they can still live here.
Yeah.
So we've been going through this the last few months.
So when you start talking about thinking about tax policy, where does revenue come from? But if you have a high wage worker who's working for a company in Omaha here, they'll buy a house, they'll buy those baseball tickets, they'll go to the opera or whatever.
Mhm.
And so it's sort of, how do you keep capital coming into the region? But I would like to say something else, because I've observed it in San Diego and been involved in a couple research projects. This work-life balance issue, it isn't trivial. My generation, I'm 79, my generation was work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you'll make it. You'll be successful. That's not my son. My son makes twice as much money as I do. He's a partner in a law firm, but he gets up at 5:30 in the morning and plays around to golf at Torrey Pines before he comes back to his house to take a deposition in the morning and goes down in the afternoon to his law office for a meeting, but it can't last longer than 4 o'clock, because that's when he picks up his son from school. That's work-life balance. My son's never leaving San Diego. And his wife, who is also an attorney, so do the math, we're talking about very high income. They're buying second homes, cars. So we gotta rethink, right? How money comes to and stays in a region.
Well, so just to tie the two things, and so all these people that used to be truck drivers, which is an admirable profession, make no mistake about it, they're not going to be able to be truck drivers in the same way. And so what are they going to do? Well, there's all kinds of things for them to do. That is, as the new economy is evolving.
Emerging skills.
Yeah. And so some of them will become, I see a moving company here, which uses trucks. I mean, there's going to be truck masters. There's going to be people driving these things, running these things. There's going to be unbelievable opportunities, and it's going to become about place. Where can you raise your family? Where can you do what you want to do? Where can you get educated? Where can you get lifelong education? How can you make all of that work? And how can you evolve through your life so that as that job drifts to one side, you can drift over to another thing, you can do another thing. And that is going to be related to your ability to be educated.
I think one of the things too, that in the economic development profession, we use this term quality of life.
Yeah.
It's overutilized. And I was an adversary of that term early in my career, because I used to think it was so soft. It was an intangible. It was hard to define. It was hard to measure. And in reality, when, we even use the example, as Mary talked about, the 1960s Ford model was, moved to the area that provided the most economic value for the company, and the people would follow. What has dramatically shifted today is the quality of life in that community that you build, and that live, work, play mindset. I look at the mayors and the city managers and the economic development professionals on the ground with the cities. That's where the rubber meets the road today. And working with the private sector to build, I would argue, even what this facility represents in this location, a turnaround of a former mall into this kind of innovation asset.
That's right.
Has enabled all of this to happen. Now, I do think the future, to your point that both of you are making, this double down because of COVID and that acceleration of freedom of mobility has given markets, and I think Phoenix is to an advantage, much like San Diego. I'm from the Midwest, I'm from St. Louis. Would I want to go back and live in St. Louis and work for someone else? Probably not. Am I going to go to a place where I want to live and create the kind of home environment and family environment that I want in any location? And when I can work in a mobile environment, you're going to pick places that have those community assets and amenity bases. So I couldn't agree more that shift. What I don't know is kind of post, if there is a post of all this, what does this return to the mean, or does this become the new normalized experience whereby, thinking about, my children, how am I educating my children?
There aren't any means. There's no return to means. There's no median. There's no means. There's no bell curve. All that, even we've realized in the university that bell curve is garbage. Yeah. This notion that somehow there's this distribution of your biology test scores, and then half the kids get a C or worse, and half the kids get a C or better. If you have a C in biology, you don't understand the material. You might not have shouldn't even have taken the course. So we're giving up on this notion of mean or median or modality, and so we're moving to everybody mastering biology that takes biology. I mean, and we're having that happen. We have 7,000 biology majors now. 7,000 biology majors, and we're probably going to grow to 20,000 biology majors, including our online stuff. And they're not going to be getting C's. They're going to be getting mastery of the course. That's what their mastery of the material. So I'm just saying that we're now operating that all these norms of the past, you know, where you work, how you do this, how you do that, all these things, just give up on all those.
So could I pick up on something Michael said? And I was a dean of extension for 40 years, as well as associate vice chancellor. And San Diego Magazine asked me to write a piece about the future of education. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to write a story about my grandson, who at the time was 5 and already was better on the computer and could play chess. Okay. He's not a genius. He's just a, you know,
Regular person.
nice, regular, above average kid.
Yeah.
And so
From Lake Wobegon.
I described his career, right? And that he ended up getting a degree in engineering, and then he went to architecture school. And but he'd always been interested in other countries, and so he went to work for the UN to help build hospitals in Africa. And then he came back and he got an MBA at, you know, the Catholic University in San Diego. And then he realized, I don't really want to be in a for-profit business. So he ended up being the CEO of the San Diego Museum of Art, right? Because he had business skills and he loved architecture and he understood the international world. And he was 45, right? So between age 5 and 45, what have he had? 5 or 6 different careers. And then by the time he's 60, he could afford to volunteer. So he joined Habitat for America and went to build homes in Latin America. So the career trajectories of people are very different. But what I accentuated in this piece is he kept going back to school,
learning,
getting this certificate, getting this master's degree. Peter Drucker, back in the 1950s, said, all work is learning.
Yeah, so just related to that, Marion, it's really, really important. And I think everybody in the economic development business should be thinking about this. So people come up to us all the time and ignorantly say, well, your people aren't ready to go to work out of the university. I'm like, are you crazy? Marine officers aren't ready to be Marine officers when they graduate from college. They have to go to the officers candidate school, to the basic school, and then to their specialty school. And then they become a second lieutenant butter bar in the Marines performing a certain function. Are you crazy? College, our goal at the university is to produce a master learner.
A master learner.
Who can learn anything. And we don't care what degree program. And then we've even blown up the university structure during COVID since nobody was watching. So we just decided to rethink the whole thing. So we've organized the university around 3 enterprises. So we operate as a public enterprise as opposed to a public agency. You know, $4.2 billion of our revenue this year is not coming from the government, by the way, because we're running the university out in the market against competition. And so we've then taken that enterprise and then constructed 3 sub-enterprises. The academic enterprise, think of that as the traditional university, academic programs, degree programs, hundreds of degree programs, 150,000 degree-seeking students now. When I started, we had 40,000 degree-seeking students. And then we've organized the thing that we call the learning enterprise that we're building from scratch. That's some of what you used to do, but now in a modern form. Every asset that we can find that can enhance a person's learning without having to pursue a degree, we're aggregating into things for families, for workers, for people at school, for people in transitions. So we're building that. And then the last thing that we built is the knowledge enterprise, which is our ability to create the platforms of knowledge and discovery and tools and devices that this region and this United States needs to be competitive. And so we've organized the university in a completely differentiated way. And those are related to this notion of produce the master learner, produce the gizmos
for them throughout their lifespan,
and then connect to them throughout their lifespan. We just got to, I won't even walk through all that. We probably raised during COVID, probably $70 million of philanthropy to focus on how we could reconstruct how we're able to reach any person, anywhere, any family, anytime, any learner in whatever circumstance you're in addition to giving you these pathways to degrees, either at home, in the military, on campus, anywhere, anytime, any scale,
certificates, credentials,
everything,
degrees,
everything.
They
So
all count.
that's all where we've gone. And that's essential to this new economy.
Well, speaking of that and on education, I do want to get to some of the
Sure.
Q&A coming in. We do have great questions coming in. Thank you so much, Mary and Michael. Aside from overall wealth generation, what has San Diego done to bridge education equity? It seems as if there is a divide between the haves and the have-nots.
It's a hugely important question, and I'm now going to brag about my chancellor, who's almost as good as Michael. He's has
younger.
been incredibly successful in raising scholarship funds so that we can, first generation and low income kids have a full ride in terms of room and board and tuition. And it's almost all from philanthropy. But our community colleges are doing the same thing, because I sit on a couple foundation boards in our community, and the community colleges have recognized still 36% of the jobs in the high wage tech companies don't require a college degree, but they do require associate or some sort of competency validation. Technical certificates. And so the community colleges are now offering scholarships. So the private sector is kicking in to help underwrite the costs. But I think the second and important thing, which ASU has done better than we, is we're increasingly in the community. Those of you who know San Diego, know La Jolla, UCSD is a city on the hill, right? And if you're a first generation Syrian or Mexican family, I don't belong there. That's not where I belong. Well, now we have a trolley that goes from the Mexican border to the campus, and we're advertising on the trolley, you belong here. We're being very, very active in trying to make the university a place that everybody feels they belong in, but also putting real money behind opportunity.
Question for you, Dr. Crow, coming in. You shared businesses need to demand more from the university.
Yeah.
So where do you feel ASU is underserving businesses?
You know, I think we're underserving businesses because we didn't build until now. We've started building the tools and the assets that the businesses need for in learning enhancement. You know, once the person is either already out of college or they didn't finish college or they just finished high school, whatever it happens to be, it doesn't make any difference. I don't think we've done enough in that space, you know, with the business community, and we need to do a lot more. I think that we've not created enough energy around the connection with the university. So because historically we hadn't been producing workforce for certain kinds of industrial sectors, there's no connection, there's insufficient connection. And so we need to focus on that. So I think those are two areas. I think a third area where we haven't done well enough, and I blame us for this, and that is the underperformance of K-12 in Arizona is like a train wreck in slow motion. And if we don't fix it, the payment schedule will be so serious that it's not payable. And that we can't continue to have 25% of the people not graduating from high school. We can't continue to have, of those that graduate, only 50% are actually prepared. I mean, that's just a complete unmitigated thing. So to the business sector, to the private sector, you know, we're partly to blame for that. We produce the teachers, the superintendents, the principals, the systems, the designs. So years ago, you know, we took over, we became a public charter school. Everybody in our charter schools graduates. You know, we should have done that 20 years earlier. We should have embraced all kinds of schools, home schools, parochial schools, charter schools, public schools, all of them for success. We didn't do that, so we fell behind on that. And so industry should be holding us accountable for some extent of the lack of outcome of K-12 throughout the region and the community also.
Could I take 40 seconds, a quick example?
35.
Okay. Qualcomm, for those, and I'm not the nerd, but you know, they had a different technology platform than Motorola, right? They had TDMA and Motorola had CDMA. And when the company was growing, none of the engineering schools were training that platform. I published an article in a Stanford book, over 1,200 engineers who came from University of Maryland, Purdue, and all of that, went through a certificate program offered by University Extension, taught by Qualcomm engineers, like in the military,
Right.
to add that new technology awareness. In computational biology, we've done a lot of retraining of computer programmers.
Like the
and
Marine
engineers.
officer story. So you
Yes.
might have your college degree in biology, but you don't know anything
You
about.
don't know anything about
Yeah.
computational
Yeah.
biology.
But you
So-
know how
but
to learn. You
that's-
know how to learn it, though. That's the thing. You know how to learn it.
If universities and industry are working together, we can help them prepare the workforce they need now.
Yeah. So a mistake that was made in the design of the public universities in Arizona. So the University of California was founded not as the Berkeley campus. It was founded at Berkeley as the University of California in 1868. And then other campuses were all added for political reasons by forces of politics in California throughout the years, including UC San Diego, Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, all these places. But when that model got built, so UCLA was a teacher's college, just like ASU was a teacher's college, but we got added to the Board of Regents by public referendum against the vote of the board, and we weren't made a part of the University of Arizona. All the additions to the University of California were made a part of that. So Mary, who was Dean of Extension, the extension was a part of the land grant mission being implemented in San Diego. So we never got any extension in Metro Phoenix because we didn't become a part of the University of Arizona. Probably should have happened. Probably would have been a better design. Probably would have been more efficient. We're way past that now. So we're playing catch-up baseball to do something that UC San Diego has done since day one. UCLA has extension. UC Irvine has extension.
Davis, the wine industry.
Yeah.
Huge extension program.
And so extension for us isn't agriculture. Extension for us is everything else.
Right.
We're just building it right now.
Yeah.
You know, we're like 5 decades late. And so we're trying to get this going.
And Mary, forgive me. I know we laughed about the 35 to 40 second thing, but there are a ton of questions coming in. So I'm going to try to get to as many of these as I can. So please forgive me if you feel like I'm cutting you off here. Okay, this is for Dr. Crow and Chris. How do we, as the business community, best partner with you, Dr. Crow and Chris, to help change the mindset of people in Arizona towards this? And I know, Dr. Crow, you alluded to this neural mindset that we can.
Well, I mean, so I'll be short with this. So we need, at some point, we need the business community to recognize that it's no longer the Tempe normal school. You know, I mean, I swear it's just almost like unbelievable to me. And so what we need is a maturation of the dialogue. Here's what the university is doing to build the community. Here's what we need from the university to further build the community. So what we need is a mature dialogue. And I'm going to go back to one of the items. You know, we're not a publicly supported institution. So we receive a tiny, tiny fraction of our investment from the legislature. That's fine, but then embrace the model that we have, which we can't get embraced. I'll tell you what that means. So we have told the government of the state of Arizona, we'll fund the university. We'll pay for all of it. We'll pay for all the buildings. We'll make everything happen. We'll be entrepreneurial. We'll make all that happen. How do I know we can do that? Well, we've been doing that for over 15 years. You need to help kids to be able to go to the university. We'll keep the cost among the lowest 25% in the country, which we have. Cost of attendance, the lowest in the country. You've got to invest in that. They refuse. They will not do it. They will not do it.
I'll let you weigh in too.
Yeah, so I think it's a couple things from how do you engage the business community, and I think it was touched upon by Mary. This nexus of having kind of your real estate leadership converging with your technology leadership. The latter part is very, very challenging, and particularly in Arizona, where you have a very decentralized system of quote unquote innovation. So you have missile system strategy with Northrop Grumman to Hamid Shoji's here and the great infrastructure he's built to help showcase these young, novel, innovative people and companies. Trying to bring that bridge together is not easy, but we need to activate those individuals. You mentioned Rick Smith at Axon, for example, and others like that are constantly in disruption mode mindset. We have to activate them at this kind of table and do that more regularly. And so that's a call to action on my side is I have one-off conversations with many of them, but trying to pull them in, I'll tell you, it's not easy, but it's very important.
All right. Water and energy clearly are keys to much of the emerging technologies and population growth that we talked about this morning. We're in a drought presently. Is conservation enough?
I'll just comment on that. So this region has to become masters of the universe on the use of photons and the flow of water. If we do not become masters of the universe in the flow of water and the use of photons, we will not be successful. Drought, that's almost laughable. Our entire water system is built on the 100 wettest years of the last 12,000 years. So if you look at the drought patterns of this region over the last 12,000 years, get ready, buckle up. I mean, the system that we put in place is completely, totally, utterly inadequate to whatever challenges we have. except for the fact that we've done really well up to this point. We just have to become masters of the universe. That means every water technology company imaginable, every decision tool imaginable, every understanding of water flow, water this, water that. We should be the moonshot center for water of the universe on this planet. And we're not. And then on photons, there's enough photons delivered to this place to do anything, to produce chemicals, liquid energy, electrons converted from photons to use. We should be the masters of the universe in all things related to those two things. If you have photons, water, and carbon dioxide, you can build entire industrial sectors equal to anything and anything that you can imagine. And there's insufficient recognition of that in this region.
And I think the combination, what does that take to enable that? It's so many things. It's academic leadership, it's research competency, it's around the globe, individuals wanting to test and validate ideas and technology in an environment like this. It's public policy to help shepherd and steward those investments. I mean, that is the cumulative process that I do believe. How many places around the world can actually undertake that? Very, very few.
So if the company,
everyone could do it, but very few have the arid climate.
So we have operational companies in this county right now that are spin-out companies that are based on algae-based energy systems from photonic activation. We have advanced nano manufacturing companies. We have advanced solar energy companies, advanced materials companies, advanced water companies. Source is a water company that's raised $300 million of investment, at least, moving themselves forward, all kinds of things that are happening. And it's a big bore. It's not even in the lexicon of the region that we have these companies, that they are actually grown and nurtured and discovered here. It's like a big yawn. And so what I mean is that you might comment on this, how a region builds an identity around things other than it's a great place to play golf.
The other thing that Dick Atkinson was brilliant at was the media and the Copley newspapers. And he had lunch once a month with Helen Copley, who ran the newspapers. And we started hammering them that they weren't covering some of the most exciting activity that was going on in the region. I don't know. You need the support. I'm sorry, but you do.
No, I agree. No,
believe me. You need your local magazines that have all the ads for the, what do we call reconstructive facelifts? I'm tempted. They look so beautiful. They're full of facelift ads. But seriously, San Diego Magazine every month has at least one serious article about what's cool about San Diego in terms of research or leadership. So it's about the media as well. It's building the story. It's changing the narrative. That's what you're talking about.
So the media here in general, and we're the, I don't know how many hundreds of stories per year are about ASU on, from the underwear that our football coach wears to whatever. It's definitely not focused on where the economy should be going or what it should be doing or where we're going. That's not the focus of the media.
Yeah, we actually have science writers at the Union Tribune who just cover science.
Dr. Crow, you and I will have a separate conversation about media afterwards. I do want to move into closing remarks as we get close to wrapping up here. So Chris, I'll start with you. What a robust discussion we've had. You've heard a lot today. Kind of wrap us up here. I know there's a lot to take in.
Yeah, I think what I digested most today was Mary's comment about so what. So what? So what do we do with this knowledge we have about massive transformation of technology, about change, that rapid pace we're experiencing? And to me, again, I look at the opportunity we have before us is that we're here to shape the next 100 years. So think of those pioneers that were trying to plan water canals, early 1900s. Think of what's going to happen in the next 100 years. We need to lay that foundation, that the innovation foundation has to happen today and has to happen at scale. And again, it's a combination of forces coming together from early adopters with crazy ideas that are constantly a reflection of change, coupled with novel, leadership models for education and education innovation. It's in how we engage public policy. I mean, to be candid, that would be my close for today with each of you. We have again, Michael talks a lot about the legislature, and I look at what ASU and other institutions have done really without tremendous support from the legislature. However, we have a new governor coming into that seat next November. And in a small state, that matters. And their understanding of how the economy works and how it doesn't work is going to be pivotal. So the activation.
We're not so small. If our economy was was a country, we'd be one of the 35 largest global economies of a country. And we now have, more people than Massachusetts and Wisconsin. I mean, this is going to be one of the 10 largest states.
So let's think that way. Let's plan for this, communicate consistently with the business community, the civic community about our expectations. To the point Michael made about the business community demanding action from ASU, to me, that's one thing, again, almost being here now 20 years, is where's the demand of action from the business community about what we expect our future economy to become. And I take that personally. That's part of my job, is to work with our board and our leadership to ensure that we're seeing what's ahead and taking advantage of those opportunities. The climate debate that's happening, or the climate advancement, I should say, that's happening, there's no reason why we don't become that 21st century hub for testing climate technologies. And 100 years from now, people are should be saying, look how we've utilized carbon, we've mitigated this heat effect that's continuing to challenge our
in the
lifestyle.
Infrastructure bill of the government of the United States, whether you like it or not. And if you don't like it, you should get over it, since they funded it and you're paying for it. So you probably ought to try and find a way to win it rather than just sit around and complain about it, which is what most people in Arizona do. They just complain about this stuff. They're going to build 3 national carbon technology hubs. And what is it about? It's about capturing carbon from the atmosphere and building that into businesses. Those are already in the infrastructure bill. There are 2 things in the infrastructure bill to build, and these are billions of dollars, including research and companies and everything. 2 hydrogen hubs to turn hydrogen into a fuel of choice, where you can produce hydrogen, by the way, with photons from the sun and water. You can manufacture hydrogen. So we should be, again, mastering photons and water to produce hydrogen. And with the hydrogen, we could build an entire economy. Well, it just turns out that you decided to pay taxes to build these hubs. And so it's already appropriated. So we're talking to people in Arizona. They say, I'm not for any of that. We shouldn't even try to compete for that. We shouldn't be funding that kind of stuff. Too late, you lost. And so, this thing is funded. And so therefore, would you like to compete and win it? So there's an unbelievable moment right now. And I can walk you through this list of stuff right now. There's going to be brand new world-class national laboratories and clusters of universities and businesses built around producing hydrogen, using hydrogen, building a hydrogen economy, which Arizona could be a master of the universe of, and carbon. How many of you knew that stuff was funded in the already signed, enacted, and allocated infrastructure bill?
So the paradox of San Diego is, and I think it was because of the military, right? And World War I and World War II, we built an incredible military infrastructure. But because of our climate and other things, we built an R&D infrastructure to support that military. So the paradox for me is I've lived most of my life in a conservative Republican town that chases the government as a customer on every front.
They're all schizophrenic.
25% of our GDP is defense contracting, military bases. Another 24% is R&D. So 48% of our GDP is largely the federal government and foundations. And Republicans have no problem with that. And because it's for good,
business. Because it's for good things.
It's good. It's for good stuff, and it's good for the city.
Yeah.
And I agree. And so if I were to talk about the intentionality of, and I wrote a book for Stanford on this, starting in 48, these conservative business leaders were already figuring out how to get more federal dollars now that the war is over. So you can change the narrative.
Oh, no, by the way, so also funded is, what DARPA is, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, $6.2 billion in a thing called ARPA-H, the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health. So let's build every tool.
So think about your city.
It is beyond belief.
How much money?
Health and environment.
We don't think, I've actually had people say to me, you guys shouldn't be competing for those things because we don't believe in those projects.
Well, Dr. Walshok, I'll give you an opportunity now to,
that was
sum up the morning for us.
Sum up the morning.
I'm as you can tell, I'm passionate about regions, and I think that place really matters, and the future is building these places where people want to live and continue to work. But we have to be thinking about who our customers are and who our external investors are in new ways. And we can't get, it's not political. It's really about sustainability and quality of life. And I just feel like there's a probably a shift in narrative that needs to happen. And maybe a conversation like this is a first step in helping to change that narrative.
Absolutely. All right, Dr. Crow, here we go. Before I bring Chris back up.
Last word.
Yeah, what I would say is that I'll just reemphasize what I said at the beginning. So, if you're all depressed about COVID, get over it. I'm not saying that it's not serious. It's unbelievably serious. We have 31,000 employees, 77,000 students on campus. We've been fully operational since day one. We just move forward, adapt, adjust. And all that means then is that the name of the game going forward is for us to take this unbelievable moment where all these convergences of things are coming together that are going to give us huge opportunities here in Arizona to build this place that Mary's talking about, where people can say, my family's been here for 10 generations, and here's what we've been doing, and here's what we've been building. And, we're the masters of the universe in something other than, hotel registrations. And so hotel registrations are fantastic, but there's no master of the universe in that. There's what are you doing? What are you contributing? And so we've got some angles here. We've got some things that we can do here, some things that we can build here. It's already happening in technology and in the manufacturing side, less in the research side. A lot of positive things are happening, and we need to have that kind of mindset. We need to believe that Phoenix is one of the most important metropolitan regions on the planet, one of the most important places to the success of our species. And here's who we are in that. And this is what we're going to do in that. And this is what we're going to achieve in that. And all of that's now possible.
Dr. Crow, Dr. Walshok, thank you so much. And I want to thank the viewers watching at home who have submitted the Q&A questions. So what I'm going to do now is kind of turn it over to you, Chris, for some final housekeeping and wrap up items.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for being here today in person, and those of you online. Hopefully this stimulating conversation will lead us to the next chapter of this path. And we talked about in the introduction, we're really embracing the next chapter of Arizona's economy. And if you recall, for those of you that were able to attend the first in the series, we went through a breaking down of these other regional economies across the country. And, Mary mentioned regions, how important regions are, and regions working together and shepherding a strategy is really critically important for our advancement together. And so I think as we get to this next stage, my goal with bringing you together today in this convening series, if you recall, we haven't done this for about 10 years. And what occurred from the last time we did this was a very intentional focus with the Partnership for Economic Innovation and working with legislators on how do we ensure the diversification of our economy occurs. And I can tell you today, we're in that subtle shift of diversifying our economic base. The challenge ahead, though, is markets are going to be even more ultimately competitive than ever before. And we need to ensure that we're vying for the national resources as well as the bottom-up resources available in our community. Because again, what happens in the next decade is going to portend the next 30 to 40 years of our community. So coming out of this, we will be engaging a lot of our community organizations, working with our universities to talk about these 10 imperatives and how we actually work to execute a plan against those, a Vision 2030. And so I invite you all to participate in that. I invite you all to become stewards and evangelists, as both Michael and Mary talked about. It takes the community to come together and set expectations for itself. And that's what we plan to do, is work together on that and advance this regional economy. So thanks so much for joining us today. And we look forward to the next opportunity to work together. Thank you.